Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Rock the World with Kay and Michelle. I'm Michelle Turner, and I am creator of Movement Lesson. I have a child with special needs who's about to graduate from college, but I go around the world helping people and teamed up with Kay.
Happy World Autism Awareness Day. Hi, I'm Kayla Ireland. Thanks for listening.
We are diving into a really powerful topic. It's called What is a Movement Disorder? Whether you're a parent, caregiver, just curious, or it happens to you, this episode is for you and how you work around or work with a movement disorder.
Movement disorders affect more people than you think, and not just in the ways you expect.
Absolutely. Recognizing movement issues can help ensure that a child or you get the support that you need. It's not just a diagnosis, it's about the care and action that you take after it. So, what we're looking at, first of all, is let's explore what movement really is, what happens when it's disrupted, and how can it be better supported for those experiencing it.
The experiences we discuss on this show are for educational purposes only. Please do not substitute them for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. And if you notice any pauses during this episode, we ask you to keep listening. Sometimes, someone's processing their thoughts or it's part of the natural flow of conversation.
Defining movement orders, or huh, it's a movement disorder is really looking at the basics of it. It's not just about shaky hands or stiff muscles, arthritis. These are all valid movement disorders, but it's really about how the body organizes itself to move. So, in other words, you might have, let's say, arthritis of the hand, right? But again, now how do I move around this to work with my arthritis, or how does my arthritis come into play with something like that? So movement disorder is a condition that disrupts a person's ability to control or coordinate muscle movements. It can affect a person's muscles, balance, sometimes even cognitive and sensory functions. Sensory, we mean by vision, but also what comes into the fine motor skills. Most people think of movement as, again, muscle control. But it's also, in my world, the way you respond to gravity. Gravity is around us from birth to death. And if you're losing balance, gravity's becoming a really good friend of yours and you don't want it to. So you need that weight transfer, transitional movements, and again, that balance. And this is how what I do at Movement Lesson, this is what I work with.
I have multiple movement disorders like spasticity and dystonia. My brain and body don't always communicate well.
Yep, and you still rock the world. And really, guys, this is why we call it Rock the World. Kay's amazing. We're all amazing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And one of the things that I want to, we'll talk about more, I think, in the next podcast, because we're going to continue with movement disorders.
Mm.
It doesn't define us per se. It's very important for us to get the right services or help, or maybe, like, again, Kay's using a communication device. That's cool. But movement disorders, just because they're there, it's not necessarily an impediment, but it can be a frustration. It can be financial. And again, we'll get that into the next podcast. And I really, when I was doing this, it was important to me that I just ripped it apart and split it. So because in today's episodes, we really want to break down movements affect vision, fine motor skills, gross motor skills, and just key areas of development. Common types of movement disorders include cerebral palsy, ataxia, dystonia, but even some forms of autism, might go undiagnosed movement disorders.
Mhm.
Sometimes doctors don't know the right words. Or they say, let's wait and see.
Exactly, and that's where we come in. Waiting means missing precious time when movements can be taught, right? So, but we have to look at movement, first of all, as a medical versus developmental perspectives. And this is again, so sorry if I seem to be dominating the beginning of the podcast. Case just as important, but movement is my puppy, and I kind of take charge. Sorry. But in the medical world, that's a big word, medical world, right? Movement disorders are usually defined by tone, high tone, low tone, spasticity. But developmentally, it's more than that, right? But in the medical world, they're looking at medical first, seizures, failure to thrive, all those kind of things, because they want your medical to be okay. But it's about really whether a person can initiate movement and respond to their environment.
Some of us understand movement. We just can't show it in the way you expect. We covered this in episode 5, Special Needs, Medical versus Diagnosis, Understanding the Differences.
Yes, and that's a real critical point. A child may know what they want to do, and a lot of adults too,
Yeah.
but their body doesn't know how to do it.
Mhm.
That's their functional, that's where functional rotation and weight transfer come into play.
Right. My body doesn't obey instructions. But I still have purpose and ability. I identify as left-handed for tasks like signing, driving my wheelchair, holding a pen, and so on, because it's my stronger and less affected hand. However, I prefer to hold my cup or use a computer joystick on my right side.
So vision, it's this is again, my son was blind due to his infections and his movement disorders. And it's really an overlooked movement skill. Um, the first key area of vision is people don't realize that seeing is a movement skill.
Vision plays an integral role in motor development. When a child has difficulty seeing or tracking objects, their movement may be impacted. For example, children with strabismus, crossed eyes, or nystagmus, involuntary eye movements, might struggle with basic movement coordination.
Right. So your eyes need to move and track and fixate, coordinate with your body. And I'll do something like this. So you will see, I hate to say a more neurotypical child, they come into the office and anywhere from like 2 to 5, if something's spinning, they're on it. They just like to spin. But see how my vision can counter and do all of this. Now, let's say I have a movement disorder, right? Or a visual impairment that's also going to create, again, it can create delays in development, clumsiness, even a misdiagnosis. But now my vision goes maybe with my body, right? So now you're gone. So this is where someone might be saying, oh, but you're ADD. Well, are you ADD? You're gone, but it's because my eyes have left the picture, right? Here I can keep my eye on the prize and be talking to you and doing all of these things. Or what if I do this? Like if I did this maybe to Kay might be like, why? Because I'm moving her too much visually, not necessarily physically, but she might use, and this is where people don't understand maybe dystonia as ataxia, but she actually like anchors. She might be using her hands to anchor her vision, right? And again, not necessarily in her case, but to do that, to anchor her vision. And this is where, again, people might say, oh, but Kay, you shouldn't be as spastic. Well, if she's using it to help her vision, she needs to be spastic. And that's where her brain is having a different conversation.
I grip the floor of my toes.
Yeah, you're an astronaut. That's what
Mm,
they do in outer space. They grip something with their feet. But that's why you're brilliant, because you've found a way to do something in a way that makes sense to you and that works. And
mm,
that's intelligence. But again, a lot of people see, oh, let's Botox her toes. And she might be like, well, then how am I gonna
mm,
grip the floor? So
Someone's eyes don't track together. It makes reading and balance harder. But no one usually looks at that when we are little.
right. And this is where I'm the baby person for that reason.
mm,
Babies with vision issues don't reach for toys. They can't follow your face. They seem unengaged. It's not attention, it's movement. So again, they start seeing what they look at as cognitive issues, but it's really could be a vision issues. One of the biggest warnings with your babies, and you can see it with me, do they look at you or do they look through you? Right? I'm looking in your direction, but I can't see you like I can see you here.
mm,
That's one of the ways. So vision challenges can make it really hard for a child to judge distance or even track an object with their eyes, walk down a hallway because they're not seeing the hallway, which impacts their ability to reach for something or interact with their environment. My son still has CVI, cortical visual impairment. He started with Foundation for Blind. He won't be able to drive. When Graham goes to cross the street, it's so funny. He's just like, and he'll go, I'm like, Graham, do you not see the car?
mm, mm.
And he rides his bike and does, all this, but still the visual tracking sometimes, woof.
If your eyes don't move right, your world doesn't feel safe. Early signs of vision problems include a lack of visual tracking, like not following faces or toys with their eyes, and issues with focusing or making eye contact.
Right. And a child's development will not surpass their ability to see. If a child's unable to follow visual clues, it could easily delay their ability to develop in other motor skills because their vision helps guides movement. So, in other words, what that means is again, I can't stress enough, doing like say something like this, or what I call visual arches. You know what I mean? You want them to throw a ball, but their vision is still like this. The throw isn't going to be where, again, their vision is engaged.
Now, let's discuss fine motor skills. These involve the small muscle groups that enable tasks such as picking up small objects, writing, or feeding oneself. This is one of my most important skills. It provides me with the desired control over my horse and enhances my communication abilities.
Right. And this is one of the reasons why, too, horseback riding is exceptional for kids if you have the ability, or adults with movement disorders, because they get to, again, experience movements and work with their own movements. Fine motor delays are often one of the first signs that a child is struggling with movement disorders. For example, a child with cerebral palsy may have difficulty grasping objects, using utensils, or even picking up small items.
Oh, the-
A key indicator of a fine motor issue is difficulty holding a pencil, buttoning clothes, or manipulating objects with your fingers. Even basic self-care tasks like eating and using the bathroom can be challenging. For example, I recently took a 78-question multiple choice test open book, which took me 3 hours to complete, while everyone else finished in 45 minutes. I had to remove my shirt and wear only a tank top because I was hot. My family would be more than willing to help me, but to me, that would be cheating from a motor skills perspective.
And also from your perspective, and this is again where I think it's important that we continue this conversation in a second podcast, because your adaptation to life or your motor skills is your adaptation. And I think people really get confused and say, well, what are you doing for CP? That's what I need to do. You still have to, as we say, read the room and do what's best for you. So it starts before then. As early as tummy time, a parent can see that the child's hands might be fisted or floppy. Something can be done when a child can't use their hands the way they want. People think it's cognitive, but it's movement based. Movement creates a lot of the cognitive development, if not all of it, where a lot of people are waiting for the brain to form to tell the body what to do. We've already learned a great deal from early movements. So when your child avoids crafts or drops things often or can't bring things to their hands to the center of the body, these are signs.
Fine motor delays don't mean you're not smart. They just mean your movement system needs support. I thankfully have the accommodation of double time on exams. Intervention can aid children in developing these skills through occupational therapy, which concentrates on enhancing hand-eye coordination, grip strength, and the capacity to execute daily tasks. For instance, even though I can write my name in big letters, my signature is a K.
Right, guys. And what Kay just said actually is really, really important. And this is why we're doing the podcast. This is where you can copy. Please make sure that you're not being lumped into certain areas. There are what's called accommodation skills. They vary at different layers from maybe a signature, but to time taking on a test. And yes, if you're seeing that Kay gets double time for certain situations or all of her situations, and you're not, then go ask to see if you too would benefit from this and if you could get double time as an example. And this is again why we're saying rock the world. We have all these little tidbits, and maybe 98% of this podcast didn't have to deal with you, but that little 2% is gold. Take it and run. Make your life easier, right? Now we're going to the gross motor skills, the big clues. Let's move to the third area, gross motor skills. But again, these are big movements. These refer to larger movements that involve the whole body coordination. Again, such as crawling, walking, running, and jumping, not just necessarily your glutes. A baby who skips milestones like rolling or crawling often has unrecognized movement disorders, and it matters more than just mobility. It affects brain development. My big warning sign with my son Graham is when he was started walking. He one day he was walking, and the next day he couldn't even roll over. Everything was gone. Had I known he regressed literally a year in his milestones, I would have been more proactive. I just thought he would sick. He'd be better tomorrow. I didn't know you could just lose it.
Children with movement disorders like ataxia or dystonia may struggle with balance and coordination, making it difficult for them to develop basic gross motor skills like walking or running.
Right. Or even, all of the three. But also too, kids who walk, one time may fall often, may run stiffly, avoid playgrounds. These are red flags that just because your child's walking doesn't mean you can't still work on these skills. But don't be like, well, just copy that kid when they're having difficulties. But children, let's say with cerebral palsy, might have trouble with gait or posture or walking without assistance. But similarly, with kids with neuromuscular disorders might have weak muscles that make it hard to sit, stand, or walk. And so all of these have to be taken into considerations, right, Kay?
Signs to watch for include difficulty reaching major developmental milestones like rolling over, sitting up, standing, or walking. Delays in crawling or walking can be especially telling.
Right. This is why you track your milestones, but not necessarily the government, but optimal. These issues can be addressed through, let's say, a type of movement therapy, specific exercises that follow on strength, strengthening muscles. But again, I can't stress enough improving balance. If you don't have good balance and you're about to fall or you're falling, you're never going to be strong enough to stop that fall. Strength is not going to save you. Balance will.
Yeah.
Find motor control. This is an area where I concentrate on with gravity, but a child who can't get in and out of a position will not be able to do the next milestone. So in other words, you've got to be able to stand and to sit to walk. You have to be get in and out of all fours to crawl. The getting in and out of a situation is very important.
I don't walk independently because it is not efficient. I'm not lazy, I'm protecting myself. However, I physically walked across stage at graduation with the assistance of my paraprofessional. There wasn't a dry eye in the auditorium.
Nope, those are the moments you wait for. And by the way, yes, again, no one with a movement disorder is lazy. You want to want if you want to feel lazy, a simple little things. If you're right-handed, today, go brush your teeth with your opposite hand. Just take the tube of toothpaste off with your left hand. Use your left hand to put your toothpaste on versus your right. Just something, eat your dinner with your left hand versus your right.
Yeah.
Really surprised how you just change a little bit of movement and you'll understand that early detection and that importance of intervention.
Even signing.
Yep.
Early detection of any movement disorder is crucial. The sooner you identify issues, the sooner interventions can begin.
Or again, there's interventions and there's adaptations. Kay quickly mentioned signing. I'm sure Kay signs the way she needs to communicate, but it might not be perfect ASL. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You know, she might not be able to do MICH, but she might then create a sign for my name. So she might say, "Hey, M," like that. That might be her sign for me. And that is okay. Adaptation that you can do early on and still be able to communicate your thoughts is crucial. But signs of a movement issue can also show up as early as infancies. So parents, we really need to be attentive of whether your child is meeting all their developmental milestones, especially for vision, fine, and gross motor skills.
If you notice signs like trouble tracking objects with their eyes, lack of coordination with their hands, or difficulty with larger movements like crawling or walking, it's time to consult a professional.
Right. And again, a professional. So don't be surprised if you're going to a doctor and you're asking about development and they're saying, we're going to wait. They're there for your medical. Again, there's medical and there's movement. They have to work together. So if you have movement concerns, you might be calling your early intervention department. You might be calling, your movement specialist. You might be, because each person has their specialty. But early event intervention, whether through a physical therapy, vision therapy, occupational therapy, movement therapy, can dramatically improve a child's development trajectory, even if the disorder of itself can't be cured. And cured is a really big word in this world.
Horseback riding.
Right. That's called hippotherapy. And a lot of people that are new to this go, you can ride on hippos? But it's a horse.
Yeah.
And sometimes, the path to intervention isn't linear. Some diagnoses take time to confirm, and symptoms can evolve as the child grows. But by seeking help early, you ensure that your child gets the right support at the right time.
Even a child can have a stroke. Even a child suddenly can have a seizure. Maybe you didn't see the seizure happen.
Yeah.
And so one day you wake up and you're not the same person. And you don't know why. It took 3 years to diagnose my son. How they didn't find an infection of Haemophilus influenza and staph in his head for 3 years is beyond me. But again, if we're here because we went through it. The impact of a diagnosis is huge. They kept telling me my son was going to die in 6 months to a year. And at one point, the neurologist said, Michelle, aren't you worried? You don't seem as concerned as you should be. I said, tell me what my son has and I'll deal with it. But this disease of the month club, I'm not participating in. Don't tell me my son's going to die in a year when you tell me next month it's not what he has. I can't ride that roller coaster. But after diagnosis, many families, again, can experience a very emotional roller coaster and but also relief of finally having an explanation. But there's anxiety about what the future holds. And again, this is where I really want to cover that in the next podcast, that we can talk about that little bit of a roller coaster ride that anybody can have. And it can change. Kay might have been a certain way until her hormones hit it. And that could have changed a lot of it, or a sudden growth curve. There's so many things.
Or seizure.
Yeah.
Exactly. A movement disorder diagnosis doesn't just impact the child. It affects the whole family. But remember, it's not about the diagnosis. It's about the steps you take after.
Right. Once you have the diagnosis, it's important to advocate for your child's needs, explore therapies, take action. Whether it's through, again, through speech therapy, physical therapy, or other specialized interventions, the diagnosis is just a starting point of creating personal care plan. And I'm also going to throw in this. It doesn't mean you have to do the next fundraiser, the walk, and this, that, and the other. You
Mhm.
can advocate for yourself, get that under control first, and then start advocating for the diagnosis. But make sure that you're dealing with your movement disorder through yourself first versus through your community. That can be very taxing on someone because you don't have all the answers and people are looking for you for guidance, and that's the way it goes.
And while any task may have its challenges, remember that every child is unique. Their potential is not limited by a diagnosis. They just need the right tools and support to thrive.
And that is a key sentence for everybody. It's not about you all, we all just need the right tools for support to thrive. That's just life in a nutshell. But it's not about the diagnosis, it's about the help. It's important to emphasize that the diagnosis is just a label. It doesn't define you, your child's potential. What matters most is that they help that they receive to navigate life with the movement disorder, that they just get the right care.
After a diagnosis, parents need to shift their focus to what actions they can take to support their child, whether that's seeking therapies, finding support networks, or adjusting to the new challenges that may arise.
Right. It's about making sure your child has the right tools they need to develop their vision, fine gross motor skills, so they can become independent, confident as possible.
Focus on the process of getting your child the help they need. The goal is not just to identify the disorder, but to provide the resources, therapies, and care that will help them live a fulfilling life. So, whether it's vision, fine motor, or gross motor skills. Early recognition and support are the keys to helping your child navigate a movement disorder.
But again, please, guys, remember, diagnosis doesn't define your child. It doesn't define you. Trust your instincts, seek out the support you need. And again, this is what we'll cover in next podcast. Is it financial support? Is it emotional support? There's a lot. Or just again, does your house have to be adapted? There's a support is a big word, but you're
Mm.
not alone. You've got us, and you've got a lot of services around there.
Take it one step at a time. Advocate for your child, trust your instincts, and seek out the support you need. You're not alone in this journey.
Nope, because you always have Kay and Michelle. Thank you for listening to Rock the World with Kay and Michelle. We hope this episode was helpful to you. If you have questions, again, we want to hear from you, especially since we're covering more on this next week. But free feel. Ah, see, even I have problems. Feel free to reach out. But anyway, next episode is about movement disorders and real life. It's about how you need to, or how you could use some help functioning in your life task skills.